Okay, here we are, Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press, here in Foley Square, the Southern District of New York. We've covered an SDNY case this morning. It's an interesting one. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York, not far from here, wants to fire 2 long-term staffers for refusing to be vaccinated as people return to work. The staffers have been given a religious exemption, but the Fed is saying that's no longer possible given their position. So they sued pro se in state court right over there. And the New York Fed removed it to federal court. Now, today, as Friday when we covered it, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's lawyers arguing that the Federal Reserve Bank is not a government agency. I've heard that before, and it might be true, except why then does the Federal Reserve Board in Washington allow the reserve banks, not a government agency, owned by banks, to approve bank mergers, including recently one by Berkshire Bank, which has a needs to improve CRA rating here in New York State? Going to have to check that out, and we'll be covering tomorrow a public meeting by the Fed on Mitsubishi United Financial Group. More on that anon. Down in D.C., in terms of transparency, the first of the January 6th cases, U.S. versus Guy Reffitt, has taken place without a call-in line, which existed at every other stage of the process. And we put in a request, and it was denied by Judge Friedrich. On the record, the request was docketed belatedly. But it was explained that her concern was that Peyton, the daughter of Guy Reffitt, would call in and somehow form her testimony to what she heard, except that she's not being called by the government. She's not going to testify. So the whole rationale for excluding the public is gone. Tomorrow, here, Scotty David, inside the building, no call-in line. And it's not the case that other SDNY judges don't allow call-in lines, but we'll deal with that in a second. Because the big one, Ukraine. Yes, we're covering the UN's failed response to Ukraine, including the UN covering up Antonio Guterres, dictator lover, genocide games attendee, his call to Shoigu, the defense minister of Russia. They never provided a readout. They did a readout of his call with the Ukraine foreign minister, but not the defense minister. We've written about it in fiction, in story, and we've asked the UN, and more on that very shortly. Inner City Press.